Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this NAIFA-Texas member spotlight. My name is Aaron Cappilla, chair of NAIFA-Amarillo, and today we'll be talking with Jim Hutson, Tri-City Sales Forum Director and NAIFA-Amarillo member. Without further ado, let's dive right in. So Jim, let's start off with a little bit of your background. Where did you grow up? Where did you go to school? Just tell us a little bit.
I'm a Texas native. I grew up in a little town just south of Amarillo called Cappilla, Texas. Spent my whole school career there and graduated from Cappilla High School a long time ago, 1967 to be exact.
Oh, great. Well, what got you started into the business, and how did you find NAIFA, or did NAIFA find you?
Well, actually, I had started my company in 2001 when I retired from teaching. I spent 29 years as a high school band director, and during that time, kind of got an inkling that I'd like to do something in financial. So when I retired, well, I started my company in 2001 and kind of floundered around for a few years. And having been a member of professional organizations as a teacher, I decided I should look for some type of professional organization as a financial person. And so did some research and found NAIFA, but I didn't really know much about it. So I did some research on that and was kind of on the fence. And then one day I was looking in the Amarillo newspaper, and I found an article in there that listed all the NAIFA members, and it was it was an article, it was an advertisement actually. And one thing it said on there was, I'll never forget this, it said, your lawyer is a member of the bar, your doctor is a member of the AMA, you should be a member of NAIFA. And that hit me right between the eyes, Aaron. I just decided right then I wanted to do it. So I found out when the next NAIFA meeting was, and I just showed up. And it's been a great role ever since then.
Well, I'm sure glad that you found that, because you've been a valuable member. I know that's for sure. So since you started in the industry, have you seen any changes, or what's something that you wish that you knew when you first got started in this industry?
Well, when I first started as an advisor, I didn't know much of anything. Luckily, I found a mentor, Ron Noy, here in Amarillo, kind of took me under his wing and taught me the ropes and led me through my first few sales. Back then, in 2001, in that area, the hottest thing going was variable universal life. And in order to sell that, of course, you had to have a securities license. So I went and got my 6 and 63 and you know, sold a whole bunch of VUL policies and mutual funds and a lot of annuities and things like that, plus a ton of life insurance. And went along like that for several years. And then later, when the VUL policies began to blow up in 2008 and so around in there, well, I finally just parked my securities license and went Group 1. And since then, I've been working with life insurance, fixed and indexed annuities, health plans, and so forth. And it's been quite a ride, but the industry has changed significantly since 2001. Back then, you kind of picked a company and went with that company, and that was it. And then you discovered that, you know, you could be an independent advisor and pick and choose your companies and your strategies and your policies that you wanted to market to your clients. And so I went that route, and I'm still independent today. And if the federal government will let me, I'll remain independent.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, I know that you've been a valuable member for a long time. Can you talk about your involvement with NAIFA-Amarillo, the Tri-City Sales Forum, and other positions that you've held?
Absolutely. You know, when I first got into NAIFA, I was just a rank and file member. And after a few years, well, somebody said, why don't you join the board? And I've always wanted to participate, anything I got involved in. So I did. I joined the board and as a member of the board, and worked way through some committees and so forth, and finally ended up as a vice president, and ended up as president of the chapter for 2 years. And we had a chapter back then, and it was very active, and you know, kind of a self-guided entity. There was a thing called the Tri-City Sales Forum. I didn't really know what that was. And finally, I went to that back when Sammy Odell, the late Sammy Odell, was the manager of the Tri-City Sales Forum. And I was super impressed with the speakers and the information that they shared and everything about it. About 4 years into that, Sammy called me aside and said, you know, I need to step down from this. I've been doing it for a while. Would you mind taking over? And I jumped at the chance. I wanted to do that because it was something that was helping a lot of advisors and giving them a lot of information they wouldn't have had otherwise. So I've been doing that now for several years and managing Tri-City and lining up sponsors and speakers and with the help of our membership, of course, producing the event once a year. This last year we had a challenge with COVID and obviously didn't get to pull it off, but we did have a Zoom meeting. Not the same. We're going to have to go back to live. That's all there is to it. But Tri-City is a tremendous shot in the arm for any person who's in our business, whether they're a member of NAIFA or not, and we try to get them in there. It's also a pretty good magnet for getting people to join NAIFA. So we plan to do that again this next fall. We've moved it to the fall now, and it's shaping up to be another major event. We're looking forward to it.
Well, absolutely. I know that that's what got me introduced into NAIFA. So I've seen your work firsthand and the speakers that we can bring into the area. And yeah, it's a huge asset to our whole community. So definitely appreciate the work that you've done there. And I know that I'm speaking for multitudes of people whenever I say thank you for that.
Well, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
So it's known that you're a retired high school band director. You mentioned it earlier. How long did you do that for? And how did the opportunity come about?
Well, when I was in high school, let me back up. When I was in junior high, I was going to be an astronaut. Everybody wanted to be an astronaut because that was when John Glenn was in the orbit and, you know, they were getting ready to go to the moon. I mean, it was the big thing back then. Until I got to be a freshman in high school. And I had been in the band, but when I was a freshman in high school, my band director, Bruce Cook, encouraged me to try out for the all-region band on my cornet. So I did, and I made it. And the experience of playing in that really distinguished group of high school musicians just grabbed me and said, you know, this is what you need to do. So from that point forward, my idea was to be a professional musician. And the more I got into it and the more I learned about what these band directors do, the more I decided that's the direction I'd like to go. So I became a band director. I went to West Texas, then it was West Texas State, now West Texas A&M, got my Bachelor of Music Education degree there, and followed by my Master of Arts degree, and spent 11 years in Levelland, 4 years at the junior high, and 7 years at Levelland High School as band director. And then I wanted to get back closer to home, so we moved to Amarillo in 1983. I took over the River Road band program and conducted that for 18 years, retiring in 2001.
That's great. So do you see any parallels that you know, your experience with, you know, being a band director impacts the way that you're currently running your business?
Yes, I do. When I was a band director, I had to manage a pretty substantial budget every year. The board would give me a certain amount of dollars I could spend for instruments and, you know, music and trips and things like that. And then when the money was gone, there wasn't any more. So I had to learn to manage that. In the process of managing that budget, I found that I kind of had an aptitude for that sort of thing. And that sort of led me toward financial services. And when I finally decided to retire, well, it was a pretty seamless transition to go from teaching to financial services. And of course, my primary market is with educators. Obviously, that's kind of where I'm from. So I work with a ton of teachers on their retirement plans and their financial needs and so forth. And then I've got about 500 now that I've helped retire that still depend on me as retirees.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, as you know, April is Financial Literacy Month, and NAIFA-Texas is currently supporting a bill in the legislative session that would include a personal financial literacy course into the graduation coursework for Texas public high schools. So as a former educator, what are your thoughts on bringing this kind of curriculum to Texas high schools?
Well, as a former educator, I can see a need for it. The kids don't get much of this, very, very little training in how to balance a checkbook and compute gas mileage and, anything like that. There's a little bit of discussion of it in math class, but that's about it. And every student that comes out of high school should know how to make a loan, what compound interest is. They should know the importance of a good life insurance policy and everything that goes along with formulating and living with a good financial plan. Not getting that at all. And so I can see a real need for that.
Definitely, definitely. So from your experience, if they're not getting it in the schools, how do people obtain financial literacy knowledge?
Aaron, they get it from the School of Hard Knocks. That's basically where it is. When people get out into the workforce and they look around and see how Mr. Smith next door is doing his saving, and basically it's just osmosis, which is not a very healthy way to deal with financial services. You need a professional guiding you, and that's where we come in, and that's where the financial literacy would come in as well, is to encourage a high school senior to look for financial help, not try to do it all himself.
Yeah, I agree. It's that's a tough knocks lesson that's not easy to recover from. I definitely agree with you that would be a major impact if we could get that into the schools. So if you weren't in this industry, where do you think that you would find yourself working?
Well, probably something in the music field. You can take the man out of the music, but you can't take the music out of the man. So yeah. I still do a lot of dabble in that, but I don't know if I'd still be a band director, because that's a physically exhausting occupation, as you might guess. And when you get a few extra birthdays behind you, you don't really have the legs for that anymore.
Sure.
There are a lot of other things in music I could be doing, and that's probably where I would be.
Gotcha. Well, currently, if we can't find you at your office working, where would somebody find you currently? What are some of the activities?
Well, before the pandemic, you'd probably found me at one of about a dozen nursing homes, playing on my guitar and singing songs. I like to visit band halls around the country, around the state, and assist the band directors in selecting their music and helping prepare their kids for contests and so forth. I've got a lot of band director friends still that call on me for financial help, but also they'll say, well, what do you think about this piece? Should I play it at contests, so forth. So I guess you'd say I'd be hanging around band halls and musicians.
Well, great. Well, Jim, I want to thank you so much for this conversation. We're so grateful to have somebody like you as one of our leaders. It's been great personally being able to work with you, and it's always a treat to be able to feature one of our own members. So your unique background and involvement, it's very admirable. So thank you for being such a great leader and such a great team member for our Amarillo area.
Thanks, Aaron, and thank everyone for this singular honor. I really appreciate it.